There's been plenty of speculation, discussion, and discourse about Joe Mixon and his future in Cincinnati. Here from Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan on what he thinks of Mixon. Plus, get my thoughts on the comments and what could be, well, the future for number 28 in Cincinnati. Hi again, everyone, and welcome in to Cincinnati Bengals Talk. I'm James Rapien of allbengals.com. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and the offseason continues to roll on, but we aren't taking a break here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. So if you're looking for Bengals coverage, you come to the right place. And training camp-wise, no one, and I can say this very confidently, no one's going to bring you the training camp coverage that we bring you here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. From different clips to stand-ups to interviews, we are going to have it all in one spot. So that's why you want to hit that subscribe button, ring the bell. Also, check out the CincyHat.com if you want to get a Cincy hat. Well, why wouldn't you? Look at it. They're amazing. Got the American flag on the side. And my guy, Ted Karras, well, all of the proceeds go to a good cause. So Ted doing the Lord's work in helping Village of Marici in Indianapolis. So go there now, the CincyHat.com. Let's dive in and let's start with Joe Mixon, and we're going to hear from Brian Callahan, the Bengals offensive coordinator, in just a few minutes, maybe even sooner than that. But before I get to Callahan, there's been so much discussion about Joe Mixon, nationally, locally, and everyone's headbutting about it and mad about it because they disagree, or maybe you agree, but then you can't understand why someone wants to keep him on the roster, or other people want him to take a pay cut, or all of those things. All right, well, Joe Mixon's on the roster. And there's a lot of questions, but I think that the way the Bengals have approached this is the exact opposite of how we have our conversations about sports, because it's very instant. It's very automatic. It's all right. You got to have an opinion. Bengals eliminated in the AFC Championship game. Next day, you have to have an opinion about the offseason, what they need to do, who they should go after, well, maybe who they should draft, all of those things. And obviously move on from Mixon. And that's what the opinion that some people had. And so looking at it, they haven't done that. I don't think they will at this point, but it's not impossible. I think the door is still cracked on that idea. I do think that a pay cut is still very likely, but I'm not here to discuss that. We've done plenty of videos on that. The point is, Joe Mixon has a $12.8 million cap hit this year. The Bengals could save over $10 million against the cap if they decided to move on. A lot of that has to do with potential extensions that could come up. And if they need that cap, it's not even the money, it's the cap space to not just go Joe Burrow, but maybe they get something done with Logan Wilson. Maybe it's T. Higgins. And that's the part where are you sure you want to allocate that amount of cap space to a guy in Joe Mixon who averaged 3.6 yards per carry last year? Again, that is what it is. I think Joe Mixon will be better this year if he's on the team. And at this point, I do expect him to be on the team, even if it's at a lower number. That said, I do think he deserves praise for showing up to the offseason program. Didn't have to. All of the voluntary portions, he was there. He did bring the same energy in the locker room, at least when I was in the locker room, that he always did and always has. And it's one of those things where I think so far, this Bengals team, they're in on Joe Mixon. They're around Joe Mixon. And if he's on the roster, because the front office and the team are different. Front office handles stuff upstairs. The team, well, they haven't been rattled by all the speculation. I asked Brian Callahan about Mixon, how he's carried himself, all of the discourse this offseason involving 28 as well on the Locked On Bengals podcast. Here's Brian.
He's been great. He's been Joe, and I think that's over his time here now. He's cemented himself as a really high energy player that brings that kind of intensity to practice every day. He's great to be around. I love his energy. It's really enjoyable to be a part of. He does bring energy for the team. And all the things with Joe, a lot of that is things that are out of his control anyway. The contract and the money, things that people talk about out there in the world, he's got no control over that. And if the front office decides to do something about it, so be it. That's what happens. And he goes from, whatever that looks like, he makes an adjustment. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And he plays football for us like he has for the last, 7-8 seasons now. And so he's been great. There's been no drop off in the way he approaches it, the way he comes to work every day. And all the things that he's got off the field, that are distractions to some degree are things that will be resolved, really outside of any of our hands or control, and whatever that ends up looking like, you deal with it when it comes. But as of right now, he seems like he's focused and ready to roll and play football.
I think Brian did a really good job of summing it up. It's out of his control, and it's out of Brian's control, and it's out of the coaching staff's control, and it's probably still up in the air a bit. But there's at least a pretty decent chance he's on the roster now, I would say. There's a chance that they say they don't even approach him about a pay cut. If extension talks don't go anywhere with some of these guys, and I'm not saying the Burrow deal, I think the Burrow deal is kind of separate, but if they don't need the space, I do think there's a scenario where they say, Joe's been loyal to us. We've been loyal to Joe. We've had the off-season questions, or the off-the-field questions this off-season with him. But assuming those go okay and get resolved, and there's one that still hasn't been resolved yet. But if that happens, then I could see them bringing him back at that number. Not saying it's likely, but I could certainly see it. And whether it's the 300 plus yards, 40 touchdowns that he's ran for on the ground in 6 seasons, the 1,700 receiving yards that he's had, he's a guy that has established himself with this team, with this franchise. He praised Mike Brown in an exclusive interview that Elise Jesse had right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk with Joe. So make sure you check that out. But I think that looking at all of this, the entire picture, you have the coaching staff operating like Joe Mixon's going to be on the roster, knowing that the powers that be above could always make a change, could always ask him to call his agent, Peter Shaver, and say, hey, we want to renegotiate this deal. We want him to take a pay cut. Look at the running back market. It's been awful. There's big names out there. There's guys that are established that are out there, and they're not getting big money. They're getting nowhere near what Mixon's currently making. Let's keep him around, but let's make this work. Would Joe be willing to do that? I don't know. I don't think they've approached Mixon's camp with that yet. Will it happen? Who knows? But I think that Mixon's done the right things inside the stadium. He needs to get his name cleared with all the off the field stuff and the aggravated menacing charge from January before the Buffalo game. If that happens, I think there's a chance that he just gets brought back at the same number and they go from there. I think he's going to have a better year this year, regardless of what he's making. I think he'll have a better year this year than last year. It was hard to be where he was last year as a runner. I mean, the run game, you could say, it's the offensive line and all of those things. I just think they were trying to find themselves. That said, this team isn't going to run the ball a lot. They aren't. They need to be efficient on the ground. They don't need him to run the ball 20 to 25 times. So you can make that argument either way. Is it worth it? Is it not? We'll save that for another day. Point is, Joe Mixon doing the right things. Brian Callahan summed it up well. And I think that his future is still TBD, at least his future salary here in Cincinnati. So we'll see, right? I know I've been billed a Mixon hater by many. That's fine. I'm not. I like to tell it like it is. And like it is there were certainly plenty of times this offseason where it felt like he was going to be gone. He's still in Cincinnati. He's still on the roster. And there's certainly a good chance that he'll stay on the roster this season. Is the door open for otherwise? Potentially. So I'm here to keep you informed on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. Whether it's uncomfortable or not, whether it's a mainstay or not, I like to give you the latest, and that is the latest on Joe Mixon. So for Andrew Fox Miller, our channel coordinator, I'm James Rapien. Hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and until next time, thank you so much for watching Cincinnati Bengals Talk.